All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Verna Ruffin. I'm the Superintendent of Schools, and I'd like to thank you for joining this webinar this morning. With me are members of my senior cabinet staff and members that are going to be participating and able to answer questions that you might have and also share information that we are going to want you to know about to date. Our meeting is also being recorded. It will be posted on our website and people can view it for the future. So if you know of someone who wanted to be here, maybe couldn't be here, or perhaps should know some of this information up to date, please advise them that this meeting is going to be posted on our website and they're able to connect with it to learn the most up-to-date information. We're also going to be able to provide the answers to questions that are going to be posed in Spanish and Albanian. So please make certain that any questions that you have, you post them in the chat box. My staff and I are here ready and available to answer your questions. We're going to start off this morning, first of all, by giving you an overview of what we know so far about the opening of school, and understand that things are going to be changing perhaps rapidly and between now and before the students come into school on August the 30th. So we are committed to making certain that you have the most current and up-to-date information. You will note that we sent a memo out a few days ago to talk specifically about what we are able to do in terms of a virtual academy or online learning for next school year. And I will definitely address that more specifically as we continue with this webinar. First of all, I want to thank you again for joining us and for allowing us an opportunity to be able to respond to some of the what I call is the stages that are so important before you open up a school, and definitely something we could not have imagined a few months ago, that reopening an entire school district after we have spent the last 16, 17 months where we have not all been physically in the building. And we recognize that for many of our students, as a matter of fact, over 50% of them have not been inside the building for over a year and a half. And we recognize that the way that we're going to reopen schools with the expectation that everybody comes back in person is we're going to do it by sharing information, accurate information and processes that everyone needs to be aware of so that we can have a successful and a healthy school year. Our going back to school for the year 2021-22 is posted on our website. I encourage everyone to continue to keep connected with all of the latest information by visiting our website frequently, and of course, being responsive whenever you receive a Parent Square notification. We said many months ago that the school year that we are preparing for this August is going to be in person. We stated in our plan that we were going to be working on what virtual would look like for the future. And we are committed to doing that. Very specifically, however, the State Department communicated with us on Monday, July 19th, that we were not going to be able to offer a virtual academy in any school system throughout the state of Connecticut this school year, which means that we have to rethink that component. We're going to continue to work on it, but we are not able to provide that virtual academy when school opens in the fall, or as we had planned, perhaps not in the fall, but perhaps in January, we were going to have a virtual academy or some sort of online learning that could connect to meet the needs of a diverse group of students. But the State Department has been clear, and it has been written into law that for this new school year that we're going into, that virtual academy is on hold, that all students must be in school, in person, in a classroom. And I wanted to be very clear that that's not just something that superintendents across the state have arbitrarily decided. This is something that has been very clear to us in the form of a law that makes it important for me to communicate to all of you what that means for Waterbury Public Schools. We are capable of designing and getting approval for some kind of virtual online platform beginning July 1st of 2022. And we're going to continue to work towards making that possible as we move forward, but not for this coming school year, but the school year that follows. And that, according to the information that we've recently received, can only be for grades 9, 10, 11, and 12, so only for high school. The State Department of Ed has also communicated that they are going to be working on a platform to create a virtual academy, and that's going to be for kindergarten through 12th grade. It's not designed yet. It's not going to be starting in the fall of this year, but I believe that their intention is to have something going for the year 22-23. So we're going to pay attention to that. We're going to communicate with all of you about what that means for us as we move forward. During the course of this new school year that we're preparing for, we anticipate that we're going to follow all of the safety protocols that we are getting from the CDC, from the health department, from the various groups and teams that we work with, and that there will be some kind of policy that our school board will work on that will give us an opportunity to afford students some kind of continuous learning if a student contracts COVID, or if a staff member contracts COVID. We're going to be putting something in place that complies with the new law and expectations, and that we're going to communicate that with you as we learn more from the CDC and as we learn more from the various agencies that we work with. We also have heard, and Will Zoot is going to share some of that information with you shortly, that masks are required for schools for the 21-22 school year. So we know that we're going back to school and we're going to have masks, which is not different than what we did last year. The cleaning protocols, the spacing of how distant students and staff must be within a school, that has changed slightly from last year. And so he's going to be covering some of that with you. But as we started this meeting, I wanted to be clear that based on Public Act 21-46, school districts are not authorized to offer a virtual school for any student in this school year. And when we do design one, it has to be approved, however, and it's going to be approved via board policy and also only available for grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. And that's the current information that we have today. It could change, and we are attending meetings sometimes many times a week. My staff and I, sometimes we split up to attend some meetings that are sometimes scheduled at the very same time to make sure that we get the most current information, and we're going to transfer that to you as soon as we get it and as soon as we know what it means for our district. We were very successful last year in getting over 18,500 students, maybe closer to 18,600 or 700 students back into the school district in some kind of way last year, whether it was in person or via a virtual learning platform. But what we do know is that for many of our students, they have never set foot into their school, their school last year. So we have about 50% of our students that when we open school up in the fall on August the 30th, they're going to be coming into school that they have perhaps not entered into a classroom in due to the pandemic. Pandemic is not over. We are just at a phase of making certain that we reopen and that we offer quality in-person instruction for all of our students in the district. We understand that there could be some challenges, but we're going to be talking and planning and working with all of us together to make certain that we do the very best for our students and our staff, and of course make certain that our parents know everything that's getting ready to happen as we open school in the fall, totally in person. So our school calendar, our new school calendar for the next 3 years is posted on the website. That school calendar gives you the specifics of when school is in session and when we have half days of school for students, because our staff will continue to learn and grow professionally in professional development. We also know that we're not going to stop using computers. We're going to use them, and they're going to be an integral part of the teaching and learning environment. The difference is we're not going to have computers where students are going to be sitting inside the classroom just looking at a computer screen when the teacher is in the classroom. So how we utilize technology is going to be very important for us as we move forward. We have seen some great successes with technology. We've learned some lessons. Our students have not just totally lost a year. So students aren't going to go back a year and a half in their instruction. They're going to take them where they are, make certain that everybody is getting grade level instruction, and assist them along the way if they're still struggling, so that we can experience success with our students and students can feel comfortable learning, even if last year was a very challenging year for them. We also know that the virtual environment worked very well for some of our students, and we're cognizant of that. And that's why, even though we're not going to be able to provide the virtual academy this year, we're still going to work on what virtual academy will look like for the following year. So the team of people who have worked very hard on what is it going to look like for Waterbury will continue to do that. We are going to have to develop a plan for what happens if we do have COVID positive cases inside of a classroom or inside of a school. So you can expect some updates from me and my team on a regular basis that will give you step-by-step instruction as we continue to learn from various agencies that we work with. Some of the rules and guidelines that we're receiving are directly from the CDC. Our work in Waterbury is with the CDC, the health department, the crisis management team, and other entities that have helped us to make certain that we're doing what's best for Waterbury, our students, our entire staff, and our school community, and our entire city here in Waterbury. We are committed to being visible and making certain that you understand what we can and what we cannot do. And when changes occur, which they will, changes will occur frequently. The information that we're sharing with you today is not going to be the exact information that may occur in the next 2 weeks. So that's why I'm asking you to please stay connected with us through our website. We're going to have a new look on our website, a new logo, and we're excited about the fact that our information will be easier to access. And we're very pleased about that, but we want you to be informed about everything that's happening. We want it to be the current information, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And we want you to know the right information as we get it. And so we are probably going to have more webinars to keep you posted. Just as an FYI, in August, we will also be talking with you through webinars about the new monies that we have received in Waterbury. Before I get too far ahead of myself, however, I do want to talk about the safety protocols as we know them today, for what we're going to be expected to do and how we're going to be expected to conduct business when school opens in several weeks from now. And so Will Zuda is going to present that and show you what that looks like as we know it today. And that information that he's going to share with you is current as of July 25th of this year.
Can everybody see my screen? Hi. Thank you, Doctor. So I would really like to go through the COVID-19 prevention plan for 2021-2022 school year. Like you said, this was last revised on 7/25 from the state. The last revision date for my PowerPoint was 7/27. So the key takeaways from today's presentation that hopefully we get through to everybody is that students benefit from in-person learning, that safe return to in-person schools in the fall for 2021 is a top priority. And these are the layered prevention strategies that the state has outlined, that the Connecticut School Department of Education and the Department of Public Health recommend that we promote the vaccinations, that consistent and correct mask usage is used, physical distancing, screen testing and promptly identifying cases, clusters, and outbreaks, ventilation, hand washing and respiratory etiquette, staying home when sick and getting tested, contact tracing in combination with isolation and quarantine, and cleaning and disinfection. The current recommendation on distancing and cohorting is to maintain at least 3 feet of physical distance in the classroom when feasible with available space, is implementing distancing to the extent practical as a part of a layered mitigation strategy in all areas of the schools, and cohorting where possible can still be used as an additional layer of mitigation. The current recommendation for isolation, quarantine, and contacts. School isolation rooms are still necessary. Students seated at least 3 feet apart, where possible, from another student diagnosed with COVID-19 do not need to quarantine as long as they remain asymptomatic and masks were used. And the emphasis on identification of individuals with close contacts versus exclusion of entire classroom when a case has been identified. Regarding sports and other extracurricular activities, all fall athletics should plan to begin on time this year and plan for a full season. Fully vaccinated students, staff do not need to quarantine from sports or other activities, provided that they remain asymptomatic after close contact with a known COVID-19 case. Recommended weekly testing for unvaccinated athletes and coaches. And the higher the vaccination rate on a team, the more likely they are to keep practicing, maintaining their current schedule, and be able to complete their season. And if possible, all activities should take place outdoors. Regarding recess and physical education, masks are not needed if outdoors, and we're encouraging distancing and promoting proper hygiene before and after. The current recommendation for visitor policies is that the district will review and communicate rules for visitors and families engagement activities. That all visitors should be aware and comply with the mitigation strategies in use in our schools today, and recommend non-essential visitors in meetings with outside individuals to occur after the school day ends. Current guidance on transportation is that current CDC guidelines require masks on public transportation, which includes school buses. Bus drivers have been instructed to open windows. Even slightly can improve significantly the ventilation on the bus. And we are assigning seating and controlling the loading and unloading where possible. Current guidance is stay home when sick and getting tested. Students and staff who have symptoms should stay home and be referred to their healthcare provider for testing and care. Don't feel well, stay home when you're sick. Any symptoms of cough, shortness of breath, or problems breathing, chills, sore throat, loss of smell or taste, or muscle pain are symptoms. People who are fully vaccinated and do not have COVID-19 symptoms do not need to quarantine or get tested after an exposure to someone with COVID-19. Guidance on hand washing and respiratory etiquette is covering your cough and sneezes will help stop the spread of germs. To monitor and reinforce these behaviors is something that we will be doing throughout the year. We are committed to providing adequate hand washing supplies in the schools. And the current guidance on hand sanitizer is to store up and away and out of sight of young children and make sure they are used only with adult supervision for children under 6 years of age. Cleaning, disinfection, and hygiene protocol is to clean once a day. Is usually enough to sufficiently remove potential viruses that may be on surfaces. To clean and disinfect restrooms at least once daily. Continuous spot disinfection of high touch surfaces is no longer necessary, and the electrostatic sprayers, foggers are not necessary and do not really increase the effectiveness. And so these are the steps to control the outbreak and the spread, which is vaccination, which is currently the leading public health prevention strategy to end the COVID-19 pandemic. Masks should be worn indoors by all individuals. That's the current guidance. Contact tracing in combination with quarantine and isolation. And cleaning and disinfecting. Staying home when they have signs of infectious illness or are getting tested.
We're going to continue. Thank you, Mr. Soda. We're going to continue to share this information as we get updates. We're certain that we're going to continue to get updates. I saw that several questions have been answered by my staff, and I hope that you're looking at that chat in case you had the very same question. As we learn more about the different protocols, we will communicate that with you. We will definitely communicate our final reports before the beginning of school. We're going to do that through Parent Square and our website. There are probably going to be several ways that schools are going to be able to welcome you in. I mean, depending on the school grade level, depending on the number of students at the schools, and so keep abreast to that. That information is going to be shared by your school principal, and as well as activities that could be occurring on the individual school sites. You know, our schools are not all the same size. Our schools all have different size cafeteria. We are cognizant of that, and that's why there's some flexibility with how lunches are going to be provided, and how we might be able to make sure that areas are not too populated, to make certain that we can maintain some comfort level and still remain within the guidance that we've been provided. But the guidance for this coming school year is a little different than it was last year. We are aware of that. What has not changed for us is that we are committed to continuing to keep everyone safe and keep everyone notified when we need to regarding COVID in Waterbury and COVID within the district. It does not mean that every time someone contracts COVID that there's going to be a posting for every single person, because it doesn't affect every single person whenever it occurs in an isolated area. But it does mean that the people that are affected are going to be notified, and they're going to have mitigating processes that we will abide by, and it will be consistent with the guidance of all of the different agencies that I told you that we work with all of the time. We still do have vaccine stations across the city of Waterbury. I encourage everyone to get their vaccine. It is not mandated, but it is highly recommended that everyone, the appropriate age level student, and of course, it's available for all of our staff. And I do encourage everyone to do that. There is nothing that's mandated, even for our employees. It is recommended. We have made it easier for our students and for our staff to be vaccinated, but it is not mandated. But we do know that that appears to be the #1 way to be able to control this virus. And so I encourage everyone to get that vaccine. It makes it a lot more comforting to have public meetings, which we are now having. Not all meetings, however, because we've learned so much during COVID, during the pandemic that we experienced last year, which required us to be able to operate so differently than we ever had in our lives. But it did allow us to be able to facilitate having meetings. I trust that we're going to still utilize those tools to be able to move forward. I think it facilitated our having IEP meetings where parents didn't have to leave work or didn't have to try to travel across town to be able to attend meetings. It was successful, from what I'm gathering from the feedback that we've received, very successful in helping us to be able to have parent-teacher conferences. I would expect that some of these lessons learned are going to continue to be used for this coming school year. Plus, we're probably going to learn new ways and different ways to be able to help each other to meet and to get appropriate information without always having to leave a physical space to be able to travel, find a parking space, and attend meetings. So we're going to, those lessons learned are definitely not lessons that we're willing to put aside and go back to everything traditional. I would expect that inside the schools this coming year, that we're not going to be at all the way that we were prior to March 13th of 2020. mean, there's too much that we've learned. There's too much that we've learned about how students learn, and how adults learn, and putting in the supports for how we're able to learn the technological advances that are being created just about every day. And we want to be progressive in Waterbury. We certainly don't expect everyone is going to go back to traditional paper or pencil, because there are opportunities now to be able to turn in assignments, to still use the Google Meets and the Google platform that so many of our staff have been successful in mastering. And the expectation is that we're going to continue to grow and develop there professionally. So you can expect those things to continue, although it looks a little bit different when everybody's back in person. I will have future meetings with our principals. And of course, our principals will have individual meetings with their staff, and parents will have an opportunity to really connect with their individual schools. I saw someone had a question about registration. We have a welcome center that can help you with that. Our welcome center helps with registration. And in the event that you cannot make that one-to-one contact with the individual school, we do have Charlotte Shockey, and we have a wonderful parent and community engagement manager that can help you, and a whole staff in the Welcome Center that can help you to be able to fill out those forms, to register online, and to make certain that children are welcomed into this new school year. We have some exciting projects on our hands. Wendell Cross will be opening this year, and we're set to open on time. It's a new construction. This first year will be pre-kindergarten through 6th grade, and every year adding another grade level. And very unique to this particular school is that we have 3 classrooms per grade level, which allows us to be able to have an enrollment that is aligned to the growth of that particular community. So we're excited about that. We're excited about the international school for dual language, where we have pre-K and kindergarten and 1st grade students that have been selected to participate, where students are going to learn English and Spanish simultaneously. And we expect that school and that program to continue to grow, adding 2nd grade to that next year. We're excited about all of the career pathways that our high schools and our middle schools have established. And we're very excited about the continued growth that we have with Early College High, the Academic Academy, our magnet schools, and all of the different programs that all of our 32 schools, soon to be 33 schools, have within the district. We have an expansion of some of our special education programs. We are embarking on a facility study, and that's exciting to me, because it's going to allow us to be able to look at every single building, every single program that we have throughout Waterbury Public Schools, and to develop a plan that can help us, not just this coming year, but in years to come, to be able to best decide how we can grow pre-K programs in the city, how we can also make certain that if it is the desire of our school board to have more pre-K 8 schools, how can we make that happen? Or can we make that happen? Maybe the answer is no, you don't have the infrastructure to make that happen. But I think a facility study will allow us to be able to know those answers. Plus, it will be able to prioritize where we know we need HVAC systems, what the cost is going to be, and how can we do some of that work during this time when Waterbury Public Schools has been awarded approximately $41 million in SR funds, SR2 funds. So you'll hear me talk about that, SR2 funds and ARPesser, and everybody gets confused about it because sometimes, you use like all these acronyms that everybody has to remember. But essentially the $41 million in SR2 funds allows us to be able to put things in place even now, because that application has already been written and submitted. But interestingly, for all of us on this webinar and people who are going to be listening in the future, is that we have an opportunity through ARPesser, which is $89 million, to do all of those things, or some of those things. We can't do it all, but some of those things that are so important to our students, our parents, our teachers, our staff, our community that are going to be in line with what this funding can be used for. And we have 2 meetings scheduled, so I ask you to please attend. That way you can see after the board meeting on August the 5th, you can see whether all of the recommendations and suggestions that you have given to us in a number of community meetings that we've had, whether you see what is important to us in Waterbury embedded within that application. And so the first of those meetings will be on Monday, August the 9th. It's going to be from 6 to 7 p.m. And then we're going to have another meeting on Tuesday, August 10th from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. We're also going to record it. We're going to place it online, and we're going to seek feedback. So we have an opportunity to revise it if we need to, based on your feedback. But I'm very encouraged in Waterbury because we have done a lot of community outreach. We've heard our teachers, and we've heard our support staff, our parents and our students who have a tremendous voice in this as well about what's important to them. And when this aligns with what we can write the ARPesser for, I think you're going to be able to see where we've placed that into that grant. And so we will be sharing that with all of you and seeking input. And also the application is due to be submitted to the state no later than August 16th. So we're going to have some feedback based on what you've provided for us in a number of forms. You're sharing that with us is very important to making certain that we are on the right track and that we stay the course in some very challenging work. It would have been challenging even without a pandemic, but during a pandemic, it becomes very challenging. And that's why we are open and available to talking with you, to making certain that you have the most up-to-date, accurate information as we know it on an ongoing basis. I will stop there. I don't know if any of my staff want to share something. I know Mr. Schwartz and I have been talking on a regular basis about what academics will look like. So Mr. Schwartz, I don't know if you have something that you want to add there, but please do, or anyone else.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Yeah, we continue to expand our digital technologies. As Dr. Ruffin mentioned, unfortunately, Connecticut state law doesn't allow us to provide some virtual learning for students as we know it. For this upcoming year, that may or may not change. So, you know, we're waiting to see if that does happen. But for right now, we do not have that capability. However, we do have teams working on what that will look like when we do have the option to provide virtual learning for students when we're allowed that through the law. And so we'll be well prepared for that. In the meantime, we do expect each classroom to continue to utilize the technologies we purchased and invested in. Many of those on the call are familiar with Google and possibly the different software programs such as Cami and Pear Deck and a few other things that parents may have seen over the course of the year. We're going to continue to purchase those and expect those are being used in classrooms because it does provide students with the ability to be better prepared for not just the real world, but also for college. Many colleges now expect assignments to be turned in virtually, and we want to prepare our students to be able to do so. And so we expect Google Classroom and assignments to continue to be online. And, you know, we're going to expect things to change because different companies, technologies are being created now that our students have one-to-one devices. I know through the grants, we are going to continue to purchase and to upgrade our ability for students to have a laptop and for when they come into school. And we foresee that to happen in not just for next year, but for the future. And so things are changing. They're excited. They're exciting for us to be able to provide this new opportunity for students. We're not going to take the lessons we learned and just go right back to 2000, February in 2020 and say, okay, we're going to expect every classroom to look like it did then. Now that we've learned so much over the last year and a half, we're going to take those lessons and we're going to make the classroom more engaging and more exciting and use the technology for students. And so I want to make sure that everyone on the call knows that that's the expectations. We're working on those presentations for teachers and for administrators for the upcoming year. And last night we just recently met with the Board of Education to include a supervisor that's going to focus directly on how do we utilize technology for teaching and learning, because we foresee this happening not just again next year, but for the foreseeable future. And so really exciting things that are happening. But the main focus is to not lose what we've learned over the last year and a half, and to leverage the technology for teachers and students and for families.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. I still see quite a few questions that we did provide answers for in the entire presentation. So I want to recapture some of that because it's possible that someone came in after we'd already answered them. Whether we wear masks or not is not something that districts are choosing or not choosing to do. It's a mandate at this point. And it recently came out as a requirement from the CDC. So it's not like we're making this decision just because we decided to make this decision. We're following guidance and recommendations and sometimes mandates. And so we're taking that information as we receive it, and we're sharing with you what will be when school opens as we know it today on July 28th. If the changes, we're going to keep you posted, but right now, masks are not up for debate. It's required, and whether it can change, absolutely. But for right now, that's not what we have. Also, in terms of individualized classrooms and how do we transition when we haven't been in school for over a year and a half, absolutely schools are working on already how they're going to be preparing for the students, how they're going to be preparing for any kind of activities that will take place at school to welcome students in even before school starts, if that's the case, when we can do that, and what this might look like. That's done at the individual school level, not on this meeting, because our schools, once everyone returns and there's some professional learning for our teachers and staff, and there's opportunities for principals to design and finalize their schedule for how they're going to be welcoming their students back on an individual campus basis. There are going to be opportunities for you to have all of those questions answered, including finding out who the child's teacher is, finding out what their start and end times are. We're going to post that on the website as well. And you're going to be able to see what that's going to look like for all of those individualized questions that are very, very important and deserve an answer, but that's done most frequently at the campus level because we have various start and end times for our schools. And we certainly don't want to use this call to give you individual school information when we know that's going to come from your school leader on the individual campuses. As we know it today, there is not a plan to provide remote learning if there's inclement weather days. Can that change? Absolutely. But as of today, there's not a plan to be able to provide that because remember, as I stated earlier, through this new law that has been established, school districts cannot provide that virtual academy setting for this 21-22 school year. So that does change things. It doesn't make it an option for us anymore. There are some guidance that we will be moving forward on and how to provide some kind of instruction to students if they contract COVID or if they have to be out because they were in the contact tracing. We're going to develop that, but it has, and we will communicate that to you once it is developed. But the virtual academy as we knew it last year doesn't exist anymore and will not exist for the 21-22 school year. Our team that has been working on what virtual learning will look like moving forward will continue to do that work in preparation for whenever we can provide it and what that's going to look like, and we will communicate that. But as we know it today, that's not going to happen for the new school year. People are expected to be back in school in the buildings. There is a plan for what happens if someone contracts COVID, but that plan is not to be able to shift the entire district to a one-to-one virtual learning platform at this time. PPE equipment, will be available just like it was last year. We still encourage everyone to come to school and of course with their own masks, but in the event that it's not provided, yes, we do have that. We will continue to have it in stock to make sure that everyone has what they need. That individual students in response to their IEP, that's something that's discussed on an individual school basis with the child and the parent and the child's team at their individual schools to best meet the needs of their children. And that again is on an individual campus basis so that it's not something that's generic for all of the entire district. And we are committed, just like we were last year, to making certain that we do take care of our students, our staff, our families and community. Part of what we've always done is to keep that human respect at the forefront. And sometimes even if the message is a difficult one to deliver, it's best to just deliver it and be very candid so that people know what's happening, even if you don't like the message. And right now, the message is that we still have some unknowns for the opening of school. But what we do know, we have shared with you today, and we will continue to share that with you and be very open on the information that we get. My staff and I are probably going to have more meetings this week even as we continue to learn what we are required to do, what we have options to do, and how we're going to be moving this forward. I encourage all of you to participate or to find out what the SR2 and the ARPesser monies are going to be utilized for. I encourage you to attend those 2 webinars on August 9th or August 10th. And if you can't attend or you have family and friends that cannot attend, but they'd like to know what's being said or they'd like to have input, then please ask them to look at the recordings that will be posted online. Keeping in mind that social distancing changes for the upcoming year. I see another question here in the chat box. Social distancing is not the same as it was described last year. It's different. And so it is poised to be able to allow students to come back to school in person. And that particular part is not an option. At this time, everyone returns in person. Are there going to be changes to that? Perhaps, and when it is, we'll communicate it. But as of today, the most up-to-date information is being shared with everyone. Students will eat in the cafeteria. There are optional plans, depending on the size of the school, about how that could work on individual campuses, because not all cafeterias are the same size. And some cafeterias can accommodate many more students than others. Even to the point of having some flexibility in meal schedules. And I believe one of the last things I heard, and Will, help me with this, didn't we hear as a most recent update, an update on how breakfast will be provided? Like, isn't breakfast going to be given to the students to eat at home and then come back into the school the next morning, but no breakfast served that morning in the school? Is that correct?
Correct. So one of the options that's floating out there is to provide breakfast to go at the end of the school day. So kids would have it in the morning at home before prior coming to school, so we can increase the lunch waves in the school district, so we could decrease the in-person density in the cafeterias.
Our schools are going back in person, and the uniform policy still stands. What our schools have done and what several departments have done is make certain that no one is denied access to school because they do not have the proper attire. So whether it's working with agencies to be able to provide students with the clothing that they need so that they can remain in uniform, that's going to be in place. There's going to be a very confidential way that parents who are struggling can communicate with their social worker or school counselor or someone to be able to help them to be able to get to those resources. But the board policy it still exists for uniform, but no one is going to be denied access to a school because we do have resources and we do have agencies that are working very closely with us to ensure that the students have the appropriate clothes to be able to go back to school. We are not going back to hybrid schedule. We're going back to the full schedule and the calendar that was provided. And a 3-year calendar shows you which days schools are in session, which days are going to be half days, and how the schedule will move forward. What it does not include is if we are not going to be utilizing technology during snow days. What it does not include at this point is how many days we may have to go beyond the traditional school year should we not be able to use technology and we have to extend the school year. And that could mean changing the dates for graduation. We don't know that today.
Doctor, I'd like just to add also on the testing that we will continue the testing in our schools up and through September with BioReference and Rite Aid laboratories. And then after September 30th, October 1st, the state plan should be kicking in. We'll be able to test grades K through 6 and then grades 7 through 12 for high-risk districts. So more information will be forthcoming, but we will continue testing in our schools during the month of September, all kids whose parents complete a consent form.
All of our students will have access to a Chromebook, or a computer. We have and will continue to implement one-to-one technology in Waterbury Public Schools. And the process for obtaining a computer is, through the school, through your school principal. There is a signed form that parents can fill out online that says that you understand the responsibilities and the requirements for obtaining a computer and utilizing that computer for your child. But every single child that needs a computer will be given a computer. Just like we did last year, we're going to continue to do that. If a computer is not working, there's also a process to get the computer that is working. And that is, again, going through your school principal. And Will, you might want to speak to that and because we have a process for that and it works very well, but you have to go back to the school to be able to communicate that, return the computer. And I'll stop because Will's got this.
Yeah, so for any new student or student that needs a replacement device, the process is the same. You will reach out to your school building principal. The building principal will put your information into a Google form. That Google form is reviewed daily by our distribution center. Our distribution center looks at that form and then starts preparing devices for every student that's on that form. We prepare it, we assign it to the student, and then we have it delivered to the school for distribution to the student. So our principals know how to do it. They're doing it daily, even during summer school now. So please contact your school building principal for a device if you're a new student or if you need a replacement device.
Yeah, I want to repeat about the computers. You've got to let your school principal know that there's a process on every campus and it's uniform. I mean, there's not like, well, this one only does it some days and this one does it some days. If you need the computer, that request is made at your campus level, but a student has to have a computer. We need the computer. It's not going to be students sitting in rows working on the computer while the teacher is standing in the front of the classroom. That's not what it's going to look like. And there could be times when the computer is not being used because there are times when you're not always going to need to be on a computer. But the one-to-one implementation of technology for teaching and learning to help children, to accelerate children, to allow children to work on projects, to allow children to learn beyond just what happens in a textbook, that is here to stay in Waterbury. And how we make certain that we we make that happen. We make sure we don't go back to the old ways of doing things. We've made certain that our professional development aligns with that. That's why you see those half days on the calendar, because we don't want to just say this is going to happen. We want to make sure we create an avenue to learn how to make that happen. Just like we could not have imagined every single student and every single staff member, teacher working with students, working virtually, which was very hard. And we took that very seriously. So when our teachers said, if we do have a virtual platform, could you please just not make us have to do it in person and online at the same time? So the model that we were developing and that we'll continue to work on doesn't have teachers doing that, but at the same time, that's easier said than done. When that happens, and when we do have an opportunity to create that model, we have to recognize that we're going to need staff to manage an entire virtual platform. Because that's the only way you can have teachers not teaching in person and in the classroom at the same time. But our teachers were very clear, and we heard them. It's hard to do it that way. So we're not going to do it that way when we develop that model. But whenever that model gets developed, which will not be this year because we've gotten this law that just came in. But when it does happen, we have to be able to staff it. And staffing takes funding. And when we staff it, it has to look differently than just, I'm going to go and take this class online. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, but it's exciting. I think it does address a critical need for our students, especially students that actually learn better virtually. But we're going to work on it. We're going to follow the law, and we're going to follow if that law changes or if it stays the same. And what does it mean for our students and our parents and our teachers and our staff moving forwards? Okay. Yes, students will bring their computers just like they bring textbooks. I do want to share that some of the successes with that is that a decision was made last year that students keep their computers over the summer and bring them with them when they return to school in the fall. And some of our students attended summer programs. Some of it was an enrichment program, some of it was an acceleration program, but there were various programs. And interestingly, the students came with their computers and they continued their learning. I have heard that there were some computers that were not functioning very well. And I heard about that 2 days ago when I had another meeting. And during that time, this is what I shared with the person stating, these computers were not functioning for the student. They needed to return the computer. They needed to go to the school, return the computer. In exchange for that computer that our technology department was going to eventually have and work on it and repair it, they were going to get a computer so that they could continue learning. So learning shouldn't stop because the computer has a problem. But there is a process and an accountability measure whereby that computer is going to be returned, and we do have to be responsible with the computers. We're not going to continue to replace a computer, 3, 4, 5, 6 times when or if it is due to neglect. We're not going to do that. At the same time, we want to provide really good quality instruction for everyone. So for someone who perhaps has a computer that's being damaged intentionally or repeated, we're not going to say you can't learn during a computer, but you might have to say for an after-school program to continue that learning because perhaps that computer can't go home with you anymore. Because we can't continue to replace and repair a computer that costs hundreds of dollars. We're not going to do that. We're not going to deny an education, but we're not going to continue to send that computer home. And so, and we will provide other options. And that option may be that your day has to look a lot different than somebody who is very dependable and is going to keep that computer for a long period of time. And that's an example of how we want people to be responsible and accountable for their computers.
Yeah, and also we just fully implemented an asset management system so we can track student devices and how many devices a student has and how many times they're receiving it and the damage that was done to a device or was just a normal failure. So we're doing a lot more and we have a lot more tools in place to be able to monitor that.
As we've done in the past, we will have before and after school programs. You know, the schools that used to have them will continue, and those programs typically don't start on the first day of school. So that's one thing that we're asking everybody when school principals and school staff are going to be communicating what their plans are, when their different events are, what their different processes are for registration, that you stay connected to that school so that you can get the most up-to-date information for that particular school and enroll in a particular program if it is of interest to you. We had a summer camp this year that was second to none, and opportunities for students to attend summer programs at no cost. And I hear that it was very successful. It was a challenge putting it together. So I thank all of the people that worked very hard to do that. You know, we worked with the city of Waterbury. We worked with, Parks and Recreation, who has done an excellent job. We worked with our teachers who put together specialized programs, STEM camps. We had, fine arts opportunities for our students. We had accelerated learning for our students that needed either credit retrieval and so that they would be able to have an opportunity to pass to go on to the next grade level if they were successful. We had opportunities for students to accelerate. That means that the student already knew it, but we wanted to expand their knowledge. We had swimming. We had a number of activities with Parks and Recreation. We had a number of activities with the YMCA and with Boys and Girls Club, and we expect to continue those. We had a large number of students that through 21st Century, their needs were met, and we want to continue those beyond the summer. But this summer, and it's still going on, this summer provided a lot of opportunities for students to attend camps that perhaps in the past they were not able to attend because of they can be quite costly, but we were able to provide that. We will do the same thing next summer. We were also able to provide jobs for many of our students. We had a number of our students that applied for work, and we were committed to hiring all of them, whether they work from through the city or work through the school system or work through any of the other agencies that we worked with all summer long. The students were allowed to have some money for their work and a lot of fun returning for camps that we're going to be providing next summer for certain. And I think the summer after that also, because some of that is being provided as a result of receiving SR funds and SR2 funds and ARPesser funds. Field trips, we're going to be looking at what those field trips might be, because remember, there are certain restrictions that certain areas still have. So on a case-by-case basis, we'll have to review those to determine whether it's something that we can do. And if we can't do it, we'll just simply say that we're not. There has been no percentage of to date on what we can do in terms of placing students on a bus. We're going to pay close attention to that, however, and we're committed to not having overcapacity in a bus. We're committed to that, but there have been no restrictions that have been set. It's going to be more like Waterbury Public Schools using their own judgment and evaluating every situation to make certain that the buses are not overcrowded. Because according to the guidance that we've received, students get on the bus with their mask and they go to school. Waterbury is going to pay attention to how many students are getting on a bus so that we can regulate that so that it's reasonable and it makes sense and it's not overcrowded. But it's not because we were mandated to do it, it's because it's a good practice and it's safety. Yes, we do anticipate that our summer programs are going to continue. I did want to be clear that we believe that certainly for the next 2 years, that the funding allows us to be able to do that. And we're excited about that. Beyond the next 2 years, I'll have to answer that at the end of that 2 years. And my staff continues to answer questions that people are placing in the chat box. I really do appreciate that. And please take time, if you have not read the questions and or answers, to do so, because I think they'll provide a lot of the responses to the excellent questions that you asked today. Our facility study that I talked about earlier will give us a very thorough evaluation and assessment of our staffing for the purpose of knowing which projects need to be prioritized in the system. We are aware of ventilation and HVAC. That is not to say that every single one of our schools are going to be air conditioned. That is not even reasonable to say that we could, because it would require a lot more money than we've ever received to be able to make that happen, considering some of the ages of our buildings. But we are committed to examining it, finding out what we can do to assure that the ventilation is appropriate, to make certain that when we can do anything with HVACs, that we are doing it, and then we prioritize it and we make it available to the public so that you will know what we're going to be doing as a result of this facility study. Programs, program overview, program growth. How do we make that happen? That facility study is going to assist us. And then, of course, the school board will have to make some decisions about, based on what we now know as a result of this facility study, which projects can we reasonably do and do well in the next few years. And we're going to make certain that we do that and we utilize the funding that we can use in SR2 and ARP. But keep in mind, SR2 and ARP money cannot be used only for facilities. It cannot be used only for operations. It has to be used for student learning. That's a priority. That's the number one, student learning. Sometimes you'll see it written in the category of learning loss. I'm a firm believer that we didn't lose as much as people are talking about. We did learn. We learned differently, and we learned different lessons than we thought we were going to learn in a textbook, but we learned. I mean, we learned some tough lessons in a pandemic that will stay with us forever. So learning loss, student academics, student acceleration, student progress, student, number one. That's the number one support. The other one is family and community engagement. Another is technology and continuation of the technology enhancements in the district, which does include internet access and fast speed internet access for our students and families. Another one is the social and emotional learning. Very, very important for us. We did add counselors in all of our elementary schools. I think we have 5 left to hire to complete it, but we not because we're not working on it. It's just that we need 5 more. But we have placed counselors. Every school has them, as opposed to only the middle schools and the high schools. And we're committed to that. We are also more than just having the counselors. It's a professional development and learning that all of our counselors and our staff need to know and be able to do to be able to respond to our students in a way that will address social and emotional. And we also, in the SR2 and the ARPesser, need to address the social and emotional, not only for students, but also for our staff. And then the 5th category is operations. That could mean anywhere from the ventilation and HVAC to also how do we make the school an environment that's conducive to the teaching and learning. So climate, and making certain that it is aesthetically presentable and appealing to children in a learning environment that we're expecting students to do. You know, if we go back and everybody's sitting in rows, shame on us. But if we go back and everybody's sitting in rows just because we think the rows are going to make the difference, then shame on us, because it's not about the rows, it's what happens in the learning space where children are learning something that's relevant and meaningful to them in such a way that we can make a difference and not go back to the past, because now we have an opportunity to really reimagine what's going to happen in education in Waterbury. It's an exciting time. I appreciate your participating in this webinar. I hope that you get as excited as I am, or even more so, and that we work together during the summer and in preparation for our wonderful students that will come back on August the 30th, and for our wonderful teaching and support staff who will come back several days before that. And to our wonderful parents who are, help us to make this happen each and every day, for entrusting your children to us and for working together with us as we work through some still difficult spots and communicate effectively so that we can be comfortable with the new school year. I will close now. I'll stay on a few minutes later if you have some questions in the chat box, and I look forward to our next meeting together when we'll share some more up-to-date information with you. Thank you very much.
Will, there's a question about the consent forms, where they can access those.
Consent form can be, there's a parent square call that goes out, hopefully every bi-weekly to give them the information, but I can get the link and I can put it in the chat box.
Carlos, I'm not sure what you're asking, and when could you answer what I said? I'm a student. When do I tell my parents to call? They can call now. I hope I'm understanding that correctly.
I think he's wondering what school he goes to. If I go back far enough, he's not quite sure where he's going, so he could certainly call either 8000 or call the Welcome Center. And Welcome Center, the information's been put in here a few times, Carlos. If you call that number, they'll be able to help you get an answer on where you're registered if you're not sure. Welcome. Will, there was a question about cable access. I know that we were, or at least I think they're talking about internet access at least.
Yeah, so I can provide an update on that. So anybody who received the voucher for Comcast last year or who received the hotspot, that will continue on till the end, to June 30th, 2022. The state will be picking that up. I am working right now to see if we can get more vouchers for new families moving in or others that didn't qualify last year. So as that information becomes available, I will be sharing that through the website or Parent Square out to all schools, principals, and parents, providing more information on how they can go about getting a voucher or a hotspot if they don't have Comcast service in their area.
There's a question here about the COVID result. I think you've answered this before, Will, yesterday, but there's an email the parent provides, correct?
Correct. So when a parent goes online to fill out the consent form, they provide an email address that they want the results to go to. It could be their own personal email or their student's email address. And those results will be sent to them within 24 hours Also, the results will be sent to the school, so we can identify students that tested positive and take corrective action.
Mask breaks will look different at different grade levels. The elementary grades, I know many of them built that into their schedules. And then for the upper grades, it would be on a case-by-case basis with the teacher. Yeah, if that's the case regarding Rotella, I think that maybe that's a conversation you can contact. If you haven't had a conversation with the administrator at that school, we can bring this up in our administrator professional development in the earlier years. And I'm sorry, in August, regarding the early grades, making sure that they build those into the schedules. A 5-year-old shouldn't be asking for a mask break, that should be built in. So we'll make sure that we have that conversation with all the administration. But if you have if a concern continues, and Noreen is on here too, you could contact central office and we can have that conversation with the administration.
This meeting is being recorded. It will be posted and it will be available for everyone to be able to either listen to it again or get the questions and answers. We normally do post those, and that way you can keep informed about what we're doing and the outcomes of this meeting. And strongly recommend that if someone knows others who would like to know the content of this meeting, that you share with them, that they can go in and listen to it anytime they want to, and stay abreast of what's happening in Waterbury Public Schools.
I think just to reiterate, yes, the students, there will need to be consent to be tested. Students won't be tested without consent. Just want to make sure I'm saying it right, but that's what I've heard. So unless a student or the family consents, they will not be tested.
Unless they're 18.
And then the question is who in the school, I believe, Kimberly here is asking, who in the school would receive information about the COVID testing? Is it the nurse or the administration, or does it just go to the family?
It goes to the building administrator, and then they'll talk to the nurse and to take the corrective action as far as identifying the student, identifying close contacts, and as far as isolation, what would happen.
I think that answers.
I think we've answered all of the questions here, and Sujatha captured that comment for the informational. I'm going to be posting that. I suppose that's going to be a really good way of being able to capture the highlights, because it will be directly based on the questions that were posed and the responses that were provided. And it will be shared through Parent Square. Okay, Jose, this is it.